Okay, good morning, everyone. It is welcome to our June 18th, 2024 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. We'll let the record reflect that we have four commissioners present.
All the Republican ones.
So, Commissioner Kearns, Commissioner French, Commissioner Waldron, and Commissioner Cutie. And so we have a busy morning, so we're going to go ahead and get going. And we're going to start off with Chief Ellis. You're in for Under Sheriff Ritchie as well, so we'll let you go.
So here to brief you, good morning, Chief Dave Ellis, welcome to the police department. I'm here to brief you on the update on the camera purchase for the helicopter. As you're aware, I received a grant from the Department of Commerce for $204,000 to purchase a new track thermal imaging system, which will be used to be placed on the new helicopter. That grant is for $204,000. There is a sole source declaration that has been completed for that through purchasing and legal. As part of that, we will be trading in a donated camera system that we received from another agency as part of credit. And so we're here today to present it to you for your approval.
Is there any questions for Chief Ellis?
So you got the grant, you got the trade-in, any additional dollars that need to go? Is that covered?
It's already, no, there'll be additional as part of the overall project and everything.
Okay.
That covers the purchase of the camera unit, so.
Oh, okay.
And then I do see that we've been joined by Commissioner Jordan, so we do have all 5 commissioners now. So then you can come over item.
I do. So back before you regarding an update on the training center EVOC or emergency vehicle operation course track project. I have a quick PowerPoint I thought I'd run through for you guys. You'll hear it referred to as EVOC, that's emergency vehicle operations course. EVOC tracks are designed to train law enforcement officer techniques necessary to perform high speed and various different training or driving techniques in a safe and efficient manner. Emphasis placed on vehicle dynamics, skid recovery, oversteer and understeer. You're going to see a list of some of the subjects that are taught in EVOC courses for public safety employees, including hazard avoidance, serpentines, spike strip deployments, mock pursuit scenarios, pit techniques, which is a pursuit immobilization technique. It's where basically an officer will come in and spin out the back of a car and disable it. So it's a way to end the pursuit. High-speed pursuit courses, skid car training, and case law update. There's a quick little video here. It's about less than a minute. Kind of shows what an EVOC track looks like and what is done on it. We go to the next slide. So this is part of the original regional training center campus that was recently mostly completed here last fall. this is the overview of what the track looks like here, as designed. You can see it's a 1/4 mile long one way with return lanes that come back the other way. It was located on the property, just to the, back, if you're looking at the property to the back corner, behind where the Shrek facilities go, that was purchased. That was, originally, county roads, and that was something that, we purchased as part of this project. 1/4 mile long one way with curved return lanes. It's got 2 hammerheads out there, which are the kind of long square sections for a lot of the parking and reverse courses. And then it also has lighting out there for some nighttime driving and a covered carport in this project where the vehicles used for it would be stored under cover, so not being harmed by the winter elements. Next slide, please. So financial considerations on it. When this project was originally approved, it was budgeted for $3 million for it. We spent 1.35 buying it from basically from the county, from the roads department. Because it was part of the gravel pit out there, we had to pay for the mineral rights, so it came in a little bit higher than expected. We went out to bid for it late summer of 23. The original bid came in at 3.49 million. Because it came in over the cost of it, what we're looking for, went back and revised that scope. We scaled it back a little bit, reduced some lighting, did some other things. Went back out to bid this spring. The new bid came in at 2.6 million, meaning that we are in a position to complete the project of needing 1.2 million. The sheriff wanted to convey that as far as rental revenues, he anticipates that we would receive approximately $50,000 per year from Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission and other law enforcement agencies renting it. We can go to the next slide. Couple other things that he was looking to pass on. Well, actually, I'll jump into the project timeline here. So we went out to bid. If it's awarded next week, construction will begin almost immediately. The bid has a deadline for them to complete the EVOC track by September 15th. We do have the National Alert Convention here being hosted by Spokane County in September 26th through 26th. That's the International Emergency Vehicle Operators Instructors course for all the instructors, all throughout the United States. They would come here and we'd be able to host at our event. So that's kind of the timeline we're looking at. Next slide. I know one thing that the sheriff wanted to convey was just that with the pursuit laws having changed back, that we've hired, approximately 100 guys in the last couple of years when this law, basically pursuits for the most part banned. We've got a lot of guys who've never been in a pursuit in their entire life. And so he wanted to convey just the importance of being able to properly train our officers to be able to engage in pursuits. A lot of the liability that goes into it. Because as we mentioned, we've got some guys, probably half of our force now has never even been in a chase. So we're gonna have to kind of build those skills back up, start them back up from ground zero. And get them up to a place where we can safely do this. So coming before you today to talk with you about the bid, we have Bruce Russell in here as well. He's project manager for this, and we're available for any questions that you might have.
So go back the slide on the timeline. So it says that the project was approved on June 23rd. Was that last year?
No, I'm sorry, I apologize. If it's approved next week by the VOCC.
Okay, well, the 23rd is Sunday. So it should be the 24th or 25th.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, all right, I'm just trying to keep up.
Yeah.
Thought it was in a time warp.
Yeah, good point.
So where are you taking folks out for training currently?
So currently, we try to use the Deer Park Airport. It works in some aspects, but we have to work around their schedule. doesn't fit all of our needs. And it's apart from the training center. There's a lot of classroom needs that's needed. The Deer Park Airport doesn't offer those amenities. So by being able to have a dedicated track that we're able to use really to spin up our guys, have the adjoining classrooms to be able to do the classroom portions of it would be very helpful.
So I wasn't here when this was, the concept was developed in the training center, so what was, I know that inflation has, you know, increased the cost of a lot of projects the last couple of years. What was the original budget? And then you said that you did have some remaining.
Correct.
Because you purchased the land.
Yep, so originally $3 million was scheduled for this project and budgeted for this project. And that was, 3-4 years ago. When we went to purchase the land next door, which is County Roads property, it was more expensive than we anticipated because we had to pay the market value of it. We had to pay for the mineral rights of it as well, because it is a gravel pit. So that actually escalated our costs, even though we're buying it from the county. So that was one of the main drivers as to why this came in higher. So we currently still have, Bruce, how much remaining? 1.8.
Little over 1.8,
1.8.
but out of that, I still have part of the permitting process for the range was Washington State DOT said, well, if your anticipated traffic counts are okay, then they won't let us put in a turn lane. But their caveat was we have to do a new traffic study now that the facility's open, and I'm trying to get that scheduled right now. If in fact they want us to come in and put in a turn lane, which I don't really anticipate, we're looking at probably $200,000 to $250,000 for that.
So we anticipate the ask here is 1.2 to complete the project.
So, and I'll just say, excuse me, that this was all part of the $50 million that we knew we were paying for. It was anticipated within that $50 million for the small arms range. At that point, the EVOC track was just going to be the last thing that was done after the training center was finished. So,
So we have debt already for the training center.
yes, so we sold bonds. We sold 40, was it 40 or
Yeah.
30? I can't remember now.
Put 10 in, I think it's about 30.
But
We bought it down 10 million.
Yes.
You are
Yeah.
correct on that. So whatever that original.
Total project.
it was two issues. It wasn't a single issue, it was two issues. Because we-
Non-taxable and taxable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Within the same time frame, though.
Yeah.
So same time. So anyway, so it's just all part of that, and yes, costs have gone up on the small arms range part of it once we started construction. It's not been. It's been a good project, Bruce, but it hasn't had, not without its challenges that we've all
That's it, you-
experienced. So.
So do you still do and I apologize, I don't know whether it's the sheriff's office or whether it's through risk management. But we used to do skid control training. And do we still do that? Is it through the sheriff's office or through risk management? And if we still do it, when do we do it? And how do we get on the list?
So, so the skid car is something that is ran through risk management. They're the ones that own the vehicle and that kind of stuff. This facility would certainly be a great place to use it. And we would make it available if approved for risk management to use for all county.
Because otherwise it used to be on the track.
Yeah. Yes.
Because we used to use this raceway park too before we sold it.
And for anyone who maybe hasn't had a chance to use it, basically it simulates driving in icy conditions and different conditions. It basically reduces the traction of the vehicle. So it spins out, simulates an icy drive, and it makes it so drivers can practice driving in those conditions.
Or you can just have a good time.
Commissioner Jordan.
Sorry, I cut out. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I cut out for like 2 minutes while you were talking about the money, but can you just reiterate, is this already in the budget for this year?
So in the original project, there's about 1.8 remaining. As part of the original, entire training center complex. Because of the cost to purchase the property that we did a couple of years ago, which was part of the county, roads department and their gravel pit, we had to pay mineral rights. The cost came in higher than we expected, meaning that to complete the project, there is a need for an additional 1.2 million.
So that's not in the budget currently for this that we adopted last year. So help me understand what the reason is why that wasn't in this year's budget. Is it just an unexpected increase, or why wasn't that already factored into planning for this year?
So last fall, we received the bids, the original bid for this project, and it came in higher than expected. We met with CEO Scott Simmons. Scott asked that we revise the scope of the project and scale it back to try and be able to make it a more reasonable ask. So we went back out to bid. We got the bids back just a couple of weeks ago, and it did come in significantly lower than the previous bid, the first bid. But it's still at a point where there's 1.2 needed.
So, and Commissioner Jordan, what I was letting Commissioner Waldron know was that this was all part of when we approved the small arms range in the training center. This was all part of that $50 million that we were anticipating. But costs have since come in higher even with the small arms range and all of that. So this was the last piece of that plan that we had all approved, I guess, is to how to say it. And so that's why it wasn't budgeted for separately, because we thought it was all part of that initial lump sum that we had gone and bonded. So, but now with the small arms range, costs had escalated somewhat on that. With the purchase of the property, one fund can't benefit another fund when it's an enterprise fund. So that's why the road fund had originally purchased that property. So that's why the general fund then had to buy that from the road fund, because you can't just swap the property within it. So that's part of what just the escalation in costs that have come in on the project.
Well, and the nice part about that is that we're paying ourselves because the money went into the road fund, which goes into county roads, which benefits taxpayers. So it's more of an accounting function between two different departments. But as far as the taxpayer is concerned, the money went from one pocket into the other, but it's still taxpayer money.
And this was never part of this whole piece of the small arms range property, and all of that was never part of the sheriff's budget. It was always part of our anticipation as the commissioners. So it's just we're getting to the point where they finally, there was some permitting issues that I think had to be overcome for us to actually bid it out. So now we're just seeing what those bids were coming in at.
Was there, when the bids came back high last fall, was there any discussion about whether this wouldn't go forward this year? Or I'm just trying to get a sense of the annual budget piece, because we plan for and talk about a lot of expected projects and expenses. So I understand the historical. I'm just trying to understand the more recent for this budget process.
So Commissioner, the original budget as part of the small arms range, which the county went out to bond against, portion of it, we used 10 million of general fund to buy down, so we didn't have to bond as much. The remaining amount that we went out to bond on, we had set aside $3 million for anticipated cost of building the EBOC course. After purchasing the property, that left about 1.8, and some other things that we had done, left about 1.8. That was available funds from the bonds that were issued. So that 1.8 has continued to carry over in our budget with anticipating completing the project. Last year, when the initial estimates came back for the project, it was going to be beyond the 1.8, quite a bit beyond it. So that's why the team went out and redid the scope to bid it out again to see if we could get closer to that 1.8. So the 1.8 was in the budget, so now the bids have come back and the bids to complete the project are an additional 1.2 on top. So we do not have identified budget for that. That's the ask in front of the commissioners today as to how to address that shortfall. Does that help?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
So if I could just clarify on the agenda sheet, it says we have 1.25 million remaining from the training center. Is that what you're referring to from the training center project?
We have 1.8 remaining from the original 3 million that was budgeted for EVOC. So I'm not sure what the 1.2 is referring to.
The 1.8 is what's total left from the project. We think there's about 1.2 that is available for the EVOC track because of the potential to have to put in a turn lane out there and a couple other things that Bruce mentioned, so.
So you're reserving like $600,000 in case you need to do the turn lane?
Anything else that's got to be finished for the
Okay.
project out there, any of the turn lanes, those kind of things that Bruce talked about.
I'm just trying to get the accurate numbers here, because when you subtract 1.8 from 2.6, you get $800,000. But what you're saying is that remainder you would like to keep aside for this other part of the project.
Correct, because if we do have to do the turn lane, that's gonna cost me $250,000. I've got in that 1.2 ask, we've got a little bit of a contingency. I think I put in 5%, just in case we run into some bad soils or something like that, which happened on the range project. Basically, I prefer coming to you guys with an ask, and then hopefully I can give you some back, as opposed to at the end, get partway through and then have to put a contractor on hold while we try to get more funds.
And Bruce, just to confirm, I'm looking at your sheet. 1.25 is the shortfall right now. If we have to put in the turn lane, the 265, yeah, so that's 1.253 is the delta right now that's needed to fund the project.
Right, if DOT tells us we don't need to do the turn lane, then the ask comes
And
down.
we're about 1.1 million. Yep, thereabouts.
Commissioner Jordan?
Looking, is Randy in the room, just trying to figure out what the funding source would be for that dollar amount? Is it just anticipated to come out of reserves, or is there some other place we could look for the funds?
Likely reserves at this point in
Probably
time.
reserves, yeah, I would say REIT one would be eligible, but we have a lot of projects already scheduled against that.
Is there, I'd like to get kind of a number from last year on whether there was like unspent contingency, what the actual final number was there, just looking under any couch cushion for resources. Randy, is that something you can provide?
We did have contingent money that, some extra money that came in that would have exceeded this amount last year that went into our reserve balance at the end of last year. I know we had, I can get you the list. Yes, I do have one. Just see if I can pull it up with. But I know we did have money added to our reserves last year for money that did come in that we had not anticipated that would exceed this.
So is Commissioner Jordan, are you referring to like other construction projects that happened that had contingency that didn't get spent?
No, I thought there was a certain part of the budget that was basically a contingency for unexpected cost across the general fund, and wondering if there was a lower need to use those dollars last year, and so therefore some of it rolled over. to this year.
There's usually a couple 100,000 at least go into that.
Yeah, I think what you're asking for, Commissioner Jordan, is what was the end of 2023? What amount of revenues over expenditures actually went to our fund balances from last year? And that could have been a combination, a number of things. It could have been a combination, some of revenues being higher than anticipated, although based on our trending and probably not. Also expenditures trending under what our budget was as well. So we'll find that, we'll get that number for the commissioners and share it with you. But I think as Randy said, I believe that number was greater. We added more to our reserves at the end of 23 than we have needs.
I think what he's asking, we used to have a line item. I don't remember, I don't know if it's in the 24 budget, but I remember we used to have a line item that was contingencies. And it was usually a couple 100,000.
About $500,000.
Was that what it was this last year? Okay.
Is that what you were
Yeah,
referring?
thank you for that.
And likely that one would not have been enough to cover this, but I think the rest of our where we underspent our expenditure budget, we'll show what the actual add back to the general fund reserves were last year.
Thank you. That'd be helpful.
So I think for me, I mean, it's a continuation of the project that we all committed to at the time. So I'm okay. We will have to find the money, just like some of these projects. And again, it was a separate project. So I don't want to put it all on the sheriff's office, that this was a project through facilities that was done. So that's why it's not part of the sheriff's budget, that this is a separate budget item of facilities. So it's something that I know is needed, was part of the plan all along. And it's just one of those where we've just exceeded, costs have gone up through COVID, because I mean, we started this project
For COVID.
long before COVID,
Before COVID.
that, you try to anticipate everything we can. And this is one of those that we're not. I'm hopeful that we won't have to do the extra turn lane, which would then, be able to put additional funds into it.
Correct.
And if it goes smooth, and we can put additional funds into it, but I appreciate the worst case scenario on it, so we know where we're at. But basically on a $50 million project, I'm gonna go over this much when it's been that long. We just have to figure out where to come up with the money, but I also see we need to get the contract going, so I'm okay with moving it forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Commissioner Jordan makes a good point that if we had budget for this last year, if we did have additional dollars that went back into that we did not spend last year, that would have been budgeted. That would be a good way to show that we were making that adjustment. So I appreciate that idea. And then we just have to figure out how to pay for the helicopter next year.
Yes.
We'll get that information together and send it off to the commissioners this week.
So I'm just making sure I got a third head nod to put it.
Oh, no, I'm in favor of it. Absolutely. This, I've had the opportunity to use the facility out there, and it is a outstanding facility. And so, I want to see it finished, and this will help get it finished. So, I'm still a big fan and still a big supporter of it.
And I'm good too, just for the record, just hoping to find the money and explain it. So thank you.
Very good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hey, that's gonna take us to Melanie. I saw you in here. Sort of increase.
We'd have more money if we had more couches. Keep the money.
Yeah.
Well, Brenda and I would like to save you about $800 a year. So.
Love you already.
So Melanie, purchasing director, and then Brenda Fire. We are here today because in 2022, The county switched from managing their small works roster internally to utilizing MRSC. And we would like to transition back. We have a resolution prepared for next week for the county to transition back to managing the small works roster in-house. So there's some changes that are coming into effect July 1st. That we believe that it's advantageous for the county to bring it back in-house, keep the dollars local, making sure that we are soliciting to local companies. And there's been feedback, I believe Brenda could speak more to this, from departments since the switch has occurred, that when we run a list for them, that a lot of the companies either don't do that kind of work. I ran into this at my previous entity used MRSC too, and we ran into this quite a lot, that they don't have checks and balances in place to really vet to make sure that if a contractor signs up for as a concrete contractor, that they really do perform that kind of work. So there's been feedback from departments that the list we're providing is very useful to them. So yeah, we think that it's manageable by our department, and like I said, it's cost savings about $800 a year. So does anyone have any questions?
So one of the advantages of the roster program was you didn't have to go through lengthy vetting process to be able to get contractors that bid on projects and stuff. So will you then be doing the vetting on that, or is there some other process that
So
you're
it's not
thinking
really a lengthy vetting. So what happens is every year annually, we would solicit in the spokesman review and contact the existing contractors on the list and just ask them for updated information. There are specific things now, as of July 1st, as far as minority status that we will have to ask internally, but it's basically, we'll just send out a sheet to them that has all the questions that need to be asked and to find out what kind of work they perform.
Okay.
And we already have to, like, if we work with a contractor, we already have to do the IRS check and all the vendor stuff.
all that stuff?
Yeah. I
So-
know Brenda might be able to speak more to that on what
Oh.
MRSC would
So-
actually do.
I don't need to get in the weeds with you.
Okay.
I'd save you that agony. But have you communicated to MRSC your concerns, and they just have not made the changes
Yeah,
necessary to?
they've grown very quickly. They're now established as a state official roster.
Yeah.
They are, as of right now, you cannot say we only want to see contractors in Spokane County. As of July 1st, that is a requirement. They're supposed to have that available. We checked this last week. It hasn't rolled out as of now. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know they communicated at a meeting that they had here in Spokane County that they really just don't have the resources to vet all the contractors to
Right.
make sure if they sign up for that work that they can't do it.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
And there's nothing, when I did talk to them, they said it's really, we're not bound to anything. We just give them a heads up, we're gonna switch.
Right.
And they'll take us off. If after another year or two, we decide this isn't working, that they make these updates and it is a service we wanna go with, then we could always switch back at that time.
Okay.
As it's been explained to me, and Melanie, tell me if I missed anything, this allows us to do a more expensive Spokane County East Side contractors. That's not really available on MRSC. Basically us doing what MRSC does and managing the list and doing the vetting upfront. It also allows us, I believe, the opportunity, if the board wants to put like veteran preferences into our list of screenings, so that we can also, we know we have a strong veteran support and presence here, so it allows us to do those things as well, but really gives our local contractors that opportunity as well. But similar process, similar is if we were to select off the MRSC rosters, we select off the small works rosters, and we're still very flexible in our procurement.
Yeah, and that's how it was done up until 2 years ago.
I think we thought MRSC rosters was going to give us a more expansive and it's
Yeah.
proven.
It's too expansive. I mean, you can be nationwide and you can. One of the changes is that you're gonna have to solicit to everyone on your list. So as of right now, right, you might get 100 respondents when we search and they're not necessarily local or even can perform that kind of work.
Right.
So it's
Okay.
really,
Well, then
it ends up to
somebody-
be extra work for the buyers and the departments.
I was just wondering, does the city of Spokane or the city of the Valley, do you know if they are using the MRSC list or?
They do
City of
use
Spokane
MRC.
does.
I know that at this meeting that both Brenda and Victor attended, there was quite a few entities talking about switching.
Whether or not
To
they,
do
because
it.
I was just thinking if you had those three larger entities all getting.
Yeah, and you
some of
can
those-
do, that's something we could look at. You can do an interlocal and share a region list. So if we
Maybe
wanted
getting
to
a-
partner and have one big list.
Anyway, just a thought to have some more diversity of those small.
MRSC
businesses
is
here.
gonna start probably chartering. I know if they choose over 10 entities, they actually have to provide money for that service from MRSC.
Yes, so the contractors, you have to
Yeah.
pay to be unless, yeah. You have to pay to be on the list, whereas on ours it'd be free.
Yep.
Another change is that now, say department is gonna do a project, they know certain contractors that can perform the work that are local. You can't, with MRSC, you can't just get on the list quickly now. Whereas this would allow that flexibility as well if there's a new contractor that the county wants to do work with or a veteran owned, that we'd be able to get them on our list and be able to do work with them pretty quickly.
Just a
A
little.
lot more flexibility, a little bit more work for us, but like I said, it sounds like just because MRSC is so big and not correctly vetting that it hasn't really saved a lot of work.
Switching it back, I think it is better to have it be local and really, I mean, we know our contractors and I think that are in our own community, and I think it helps that they know our community as well, so I'm okay with switching back. I think it was part of just I think COVID and people working from home, that there wasn't as much time, so yeah, if you guys think you can.
Yep, we're
take-
confident that we can manage this.
take it on without any extra. As we know, there's more people coming, FTEs to, as we look to the future, so as long as you guys could take it on within your own system, then I'm happy to, and grateful for you to do it.
Yeah, just so that you know, I was served 10 years on the MRC board and was there when we set up the rosters program. But it was really designed for more the small and mid-size cities and counties that didn't have the resources to be able to do this work independently and stuff. So I'm not surprised that we reached a point, because we're one of the largest counties in the state, that we could do this internally and stuff. So that doesn't surprise me. We've just kind of evolved and stuff. And so that's great. But if you can do it internally, God bless you.
Yeah, and like I said, if it
Terrific.
doesn't work, I'll be the first to admit this isn't working, and really besides notifying the contractors and that
Yeah.
switch over.
And you said it was gonna save us $800,000 a month?
Yeah, 800,000. You
Amazing.
can do all sorts of contracts.
Well,
okay, that's also, you'll see a resolution next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's right. Welcome, good morning, everyone.
Morning, commissioners. All right, we have packed agenda this morning. A lot of it is, it's just a reminder because the January to July periods are our contract state cycle. So a lot of this is going to be things with minor changes. So not anticipating too many significant impacts, though there is one on item 5 for a diversion contract that I will be looping in Ashley and Senior Director Sparber to give some feedback because it does have some implications on some staffing. So that is the main highlights there. So the first up is our DDA contract. This is going to be coming forward here once we get it. The state's been a little delayed this cycle, so we haven't actually received the final contract, but we do anticipate very little changes in the service expectations and delivery. This is for our community inclusion and support for employment for individuals with IDD. And so we're hoping that with this, one of the major changes is that they did increase some of the hourly pay that we've been asking for a while to maintain our providers. So the contract amounts would remain the same in terms of what the state's going to give us, but the hourly rates which they set were increased. There was a concern that we were losing providers because they weren't being compensated at the hourly rate necessary to maintain the service. So that's one good thing. I still don't think they're high enough. So we're still working on that. But at this point, we do believe that the amount and the provision should be sufficient to maintain our existing provider network. So that's great news. Next slide. And just as a caveat, I don't anticipate any of these will come before the board within the next couple of weeks. We're still waiting for the state to receive from the state to get these contracts, except for the DSHS one. So just as a highlight, all of these will be coming before the board sometime in July. This is just a preamble before that comes forward. The next big contract that will be coming out is for ASO, which is our healthcare authority contract. This is the provision of behavioral health services, voluntary treatment services, inpatient services, voluntary services that individuals at or below 220%. So it's everything we currently do under the healthcare authority. It's coming back before the board. I don't anticipate any major changes to this contract, except for a few inclusions. One of the major things we've been talking about is crisis system redesign. We do believe that the mobile rapid responder endorsements will probably be coming to us. So that'll be an expansion of additional crisis response teams. So we're getting a little bit more money for that. They did expand other service delivery in our MRSS grant, which is through SAMHSA. It was a federal grant that we won that expanded out stabilization. Well, the state's going to add stabilization as required service. So we're working on an implementation from July 1 to December to get all the Medicaid plans on board, look at our rates and see about increasing those so that we build out that in 6 counties. So that's one of the major changes. And then I also believe there's going to be expanded service availability because of the enhancements that 15% that the state passed has helped our crisis system by improving some of the staffing and workforce. So we're seeing less vacancies on the crisis side than the outpatient, which is great because it maintains our system. Not so great in getting into services. That vacancy rate is still pretty high with the outpatient service providers. So we're getting to them quicker, but they still are waiting about 2 weeks to get in services. So again, no other major changes that I can think of for the HCA contract coming forward. Next slide. And again, this is just kind of a brief on what the services are covered. We did make one change to internally for the Peer Pathfinder and Peer Bridger. This is peers that go out and provide support to individuals transitioning from Eastern State Hospital. The state hasn't increased that contract for like the last 5 years. So we implemented increases on our own based on some additional GSF that we had. That should maintain that system to provide a greater response. Again, in light of the state's contempt, continued contempt with the True Blood, we do believe enhancing it and providing a stable system for that transition prevents more of that system involvement. So that's what we increased there. Again, just looking at maintaining a stable system in our network. Next slide. And again, this is just kind of a small list of our providers, but it's the primary ones in our 6-county region. This does not include any of the planned build out of the open dollars that are currently doing. That will come once those buildings are complete and the contracts are in place, but we do envision to be incorporated in our existing contracts. Next slide. And then as part of the HCA contract, there's a separate one, which is our HARPS, which is housing support through recovery with our peers. that is currently contracted out to our CARES division, our counseling and recovery. We envision that we'll be receiving the same amount of dollars. All of this funding goes out to the community to support individuals with behavioral health conditions, maintain rental assistance and housing support. So again, no major changes in that. And we've done really good in ensuring all the money gets put out into the region, primarily in Spokane County, because that's where housing is available. But again, those individuals, when they have stable housing, are less likely to be involved in the system of care. So that'll be coming up forward again. Next slide. And this is our Department of Commerce grant. So outside of the HCA, we also have one for community behavioral health rental assistance. We get about $1.5 million that is pushed out to support housing for individuals through Department of Commerce. Our providers are counseling and recovery services. It also goes to Catholic Charities. And then our Frontier Rural Communities have contracts as well through rural providers. The only contract we don't have is in Adams County, and that's because we can't find a housing provider that can actually accept the funds and support it. They're just saying that there just isn't any housing out there. So we're still working on that. We have done very successful job. In fact, almost 98% of all the funds provided by Department of Commerce were pushed out this year, primarily in Spokane County. So that's $1.5 million into Spokane County's economy, which is absolutely beneficial to taxpayers here, but it also benefits ensuring those individuals with behavioral health conditions maintain stable housing. Again, very effective. Our program is doing really well. And that's just going to be re-renewed at the same rate. In fact, they gave us that increase of $500,000 last year because we did so well and we were able to put it out. Next slide. And again, these are just the providers identified to provide those services, with Adams County being the one that's vacant. Next slide. All right, before I jump into this one, any questions on the HCA contracts, the Department of Commerce contracts, or any of the other ones? No major changes. So it's good.
Well, I was just wondering, so from the state level, the dollars that are flowing through, are all those dollars except for the Commerce grant, like ultimately coming from the federal government? Is that how that, and then they're passed through the state?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
So the vast majority is state funds, but there are some grants that directly go through the state to us. That grant reward for SAMHSA is actually an additional one, but
Okay.
like our federal block grant dollars.
Right.
Yeah, those go through.
But that's not what you're talking about today, the federal block grant.
Those are included in the state's overall contract.
Okay, so they just kind of mix in those dollars into a lot of these pots that are distributed throughout for these specific programs.
Correct.
Okay, so there's a lot of freedom by the state. I'm just learning the system. There's a lot of freedom by the state to take those block grant dollars and kind of shape them into different programs that are best practice,
Yes.
or funding programs like the peer mentoring programs and those types of things. That's not required by the federal government.
There are stipulations on how some of the funds are used, but yes, the state has a little bit more leeway to actually determine where they're allocated to. And they do regulate us in terms of where we can use it. So when I get the block grant, I have a plan I have to submit that has very specific uses that we can't augment or change. And the other major issue is that they have to be at or below 220% federal poverty level and the payer of last resort. Now that's hard because that means I have to make them go out and bill everyone else. And
Right.
by the time they get back, they may or may not have done it within the 6-month period the federal government requires for submission of services. It's challenging.
But as I understand it, like a use of that federal block grant money is like treatment services, the opioid treatment services through the health district. There are some people that don't have health insurance, but they also are not extremely low income. And so some of these dollars, is that what you're getting at? They have to check to see if they have anything else, and then those dollars can help pay for services.
Exactly.
Okay,
And in fact, for that example, we actually braid a couple different funding sources, CJTA, the SABG mental health block grant, and then some GSF funds, all to support those services. So where one doesn't cover one, we'll use another dollar to cover it.
you'll have to give me a deep dive into the block grant at some point, but thank you,
Yes.
thank you. Don't want to take up too much time.
Now, yeah, and again, looking at how those block grants are put out, like for our planned relief center, those sobering dollars, which are pretty free, And we're covering all sobering services, including Medicaid and commercial and in Spokane County. We're also looking at using those to support all long-term sustainability with those new facilities we're hoping to build out. So in that way, again, concurrently working on funding for support, so we have sustainable facilities. All right, now this is the one that's going to be a little bit more interesting. So I'll give a quick primer on the background for this, and then I'll defer over to Ashley and Barbara to talk a little bit more about what this will mean implication wise. So last year, the DSHS essentially came to us and said, there are some concerns with the contract. We weren't expanding out to the full number of individuals and participants, and they wanted to see a change in the contract. Otherwise, they would look at contracting with someone else. So we looked at various options, and we were able to convince them to reduce the number of participants that met the main goal of the project from 76 to 48, 76, right? 76 or 72 down to 48. But that also meant that there was reduced number of contract total that were provided. Now, here's the frustrating piece. That contract amount you see there, $328,000, is not given entirely to us. About 60% is given in admin costs, but the rest has to be unlocked through participants. So if we don't enroll participants, we don't get the funds. And that was the challenge. We weren't meeting our overall participant numbers, which is why the state said we need to reduce. And their request was to reduce the additional staff that was in the jail. So there's 4 positions being funded through this program, 2 in community services and 2 in the jail. So 2 case managers. And in their review, after they did a site visit, they said it would be better served to have 2 in the community doing that because 90% of the referrals and engagement occurred in the community and only 1 case manager in the jail. So that led us to having further conversations about how do we adjust funding and because we only have enough to cover 1 case manager in detention services. So that led to a conversation of contract change to reduce the allocated amount, still supporting at least 3 members, but did have the conundrum of what do we do with the remainder. So for that, I'll defer over to Ashley.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I'm gonna kind of run through some information. So Don would be here, but he's in Burien right now. So he's tagged us in. So these 2 positions currently support the 750 to 850 daily population, and they provide the following services. So the 5177 diversion program, which comes with pre-adjudication, screening and identification of mental health and SUD, treatment planning and community reintegration, and dismissal of charges. They also work in discharge planning, individualized case management, and those are items such as mental health, SUD, housing, transportation, employment, peer support, financial, and then they also are helping in community coordination with managed care organizations, DSHS, the Homeless Coalition, and Department of Corrections. They're really working with our high-risk needs population, and multiple third-party staffing analysis actually indicated a minimum of 6 case manager positions for the current population, but they've been doing well with the 2. And so that said, we've been trying to figure out with budget, what could we look at for a funding source, potential options. The position with benefits for 1 position is approximately $80,000 annually. So that's about the cost that we're looking at for the rest of this year. It's 6 months because the funding would expire at the end of June. And so after speaking with budget, and they've been working on this for the past few months, the recommendation that we've received would be to utilize mental health sales tax dollars for the remainder of 2024 and then potentially into 2025. This is not currently a general fund. So just as a reminder, this position is currently supported through the 5177 mental health grant. And the only reason why we would be looking at converting to mental health sales tax dollars is because the grant is expiring. And so that is the recommendation of the budget office. And it would not be considered subplanting since it's an established program and that the current funding had been through the mental health grant. And so not having a tie to the general fund in any way would be the recommendation. And we've talked about this with Justin as well. And so we are here to discuss it with you to determine if you also would be in favor of utilizing mental health sales tax funds to continue the work that we're doing with the 2 staff members right now.
Madam Chair. So I'll give you a little more history on this topic. You recall that I came to the board, we went out for an RFP for medical services. And there was expressed during that, no one applied. And so in the process, it was expressed that if mental health was added to the package, that perhaps some would come back to the table or would submit an RFP for it. The question is on this is that the scope inside the contract itself of the RFQ is limited to the mandated services that the jail needs to provide. And so that's our focus right now. So anything above and beyond that would have to be a decision whether or not the board would want to retain those or not, which would be, you know, working with therapeutic courts or any of these other services that are coming out of the mental health department. So the scope is more narrow than what it is right now, much more narrow. The other question is whether or not the services they actually provide fall under a mental health designation and their scope. So without getting into too many details, I will provide that as background.
And so we do have a program in place though right now. So when we talked through this is something that Justin believed would qualify for mental sales tax. It's already an established program in that entity or in that umbrella. To Sparber's point, I think the question is in the future. So when we look at 2025, what services do we continue offering and through what funding sources and through what group, whether it's internal or external, but that's really not, I think, what the ask is today. Today, it's just, do we want to continue through the rest of 2024 while we're looking at what future years look like, utilizing the mental sales tax to fund the rest of the position for this year.
So I'm kind of confused because I know we have the mental health providers in the jail system. And so how is this different from them? And we fund those through the mental health sales tax, correct? And so then how is this different from them, just to kind of understand what this person's doing versus what the others are doing?
So the MHPs that are providing the service in the jail are primarily doing the evaluation, assessment, engagement, risk evaluation, and then they're also supporting the jail's operations in coordination with the medical provider. So psychopharmacology engagement, review. The case managers don't have that level of clinical involvement, so their primary engagement is case management, referral to the community, re-entry work, and resource management. So
These are all like caseworkers.
Correct.
Versus the MPs. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so that's helpful. And then I think. Well, I'll go to Chris and see. Commissioner Jordan, you go ahead and let me think of my.
Ashley,
question.
yeah. Can you repeat what you said about just the issue of supplanting or whatever that term is in terms of using the mental health sales tax for current programs versus new?
Yeah, so there was some concern in the background of the use of mental sales tax when we were exploring options for funding some positions that the statute prevented the use of supplanting additional funds if the county was already funding that with general fund or was it general responsibility. And Scott.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
Join that.
This is like an additional thing that we choose to do and it's not using general.
Right. There's specific language in the statute
So it's-
that
it should
says
be
you
allowed.
cannot use it for these particular items, which is what Justin's referring to, and that we're not using it for those, we're not triggering the supplanting criteria in the statute.
And essentially there's precedence because currently we already fund the mental health team in the jail with mental sales tax. If they transfer this position to being under that, then of course they would be subject to that same expectation for service delivery. That would be a precedent to allow for the mental sales tax to be utilized.
So just because it's not currently funded out of general fund, it's something we're choosing to do as basically an extra program. We can use mental health sales tax for that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So it sounds like you want to keep the caseworkers going, even though we can't use, the grant will be expiring. But then leave the option open. What I'm hearing, I think, is that would the caseworker having an outside agency potentially in the future being responsible for the caseworkers might be a better fit, but we don't know that at this time. So the recommendation is keep the caseworkers going as we figure out next steps with the jail overarching contract and other services we might want to provide. It might be better placed with an outside agency. Is that what you're?
We just don't know yet. So yes, so at this point, we have not even gotten the second RFP out. We haven't received responses. So until we understand what the responses for RFP for medical services and now potentially the full contract, including mental health, we just don't have that crystal ball to make that decision, right? So at this point, Dawn's ask or Chief Hooper's ask is that if we could at least continue funding through the end of this year, which gets us through the RFP, which then he would be coming back to the board to talk about, here's what they came back and said that they could do, could not do. Here, let's talk operationally about what we're doing that's maybe above and beyond what we're statutorily required to do, but we're just not ready to have, he's not ready to have that conversation yet. And so his ask today is just that we can at least extend this work that they're doing through the end of this year while we are getting that RFP out for the second time and getting the responses in to determine what operations should look like in the future.
We're still developing the scope right now of it. And so once we get the scope developed, to your point, they may or may not want to take on those services. That's up to whoever, puts in for the RFQ. And then they do need to reside under someone. Is that my understanding? So either the provider would have to oversee them, or your office would probably have to someone would have to oversee them,
And
right?
we can talk through those details. We just don't have the details deep enough yet to really have that broad of a conversation probably. And so at this point, though, the ask is really just to focus on this year. And then to be able to do some real analysis on what that looks like from a staffing model and all of that kind of stuff.
So you're saying the grant is coming to an end, that's part of the funding issue here. How long did that grant run for?
So the grant is still continuing, but it's limited in scope now.
Okay,
So
well,
that-
when did we get the grant originally?
2016, I believe, is when we initially first got the grant.
So prior to 2016, we didn't have these positions?
So that, yes, there's some history to that too. There was positions within pretrial as well.
Okay.
Over the years, pretrial assumed that position within their department and then backed out of the contract saying didn't fit within what they were doing in service delivery. So then the jail assumed one of those positions because we had additional funding. It's only been in the last 3 years that the state has reduced that amount.
Okay, so that these were not some sort of pilot position that we got the grant, brought these on, and prior to the grant didn't exist. That's not the situation then.
I don't know if they existed prior to the grant.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, if we look back prior to these positions, I mean, do we have data or measurables that show the impact that these positions add to the whole criminal justice system?
Well, I think that the reason they clawed back some of the money was because we weren't producing the numbers that we needed to produce for the state. Right?
So we have the numbers for the program. The scope is very small for participants, so it's very effective for this. As to what they're doing for the jail for case management, I do believe that Chief Hooper and the team do have numbers.
Okay.
I don't know about, if you're asking like recidivism reduction, I don't know about that.
I'm just that there's a lot of positions out there that everybody says, well, we have to have these. How couldn't they be working? And it's like, well, can you show us any data that shows they're actually making a difference? And sometimes those numbers are hard to come by. So I'm just wondering, do we have anything that actually shows that these positions make a measurable difference in the overall criminal justice system? Do we have those? Or is it more of just well, of course they would. Why wouldn't they make a difference? So.
Oh, I thought you were asking about the scope of the project, its numbers, so that would be from Justin. And we could check with the jail to see what the numbers are on the other side.
Okay.
For sure, yeah.
Questions?
Can I just ask one last? So are the employees then the two case managers, are they currently supervised under no, they're under Don, or,
They're in the mental health unit.
Okay.
Within
Christian.
detention services.
and so okay,
But they're under contract through our department.
okay, but they would continue there until we figure out the next steps.
If you guys choose to do that. Yeah.
Okay. So you're just asking for funding for 6 months? Okay.
Mr. French.
So you're looking for a head nod from us?
Yes, please.
I'm nodding yes.
I'm not in it.
I'm nodding.
You're nodding off?
Well, I'll leave that up to you to decide.
So one question I had
Yeah.
was on our MCOs, because
Ah.
isn't some of this supposed to be paid for through the MCOs that hasn't been? and
Yes.
Should be, and
So-
so are we gonna look to that in the future?
I think that's the larger conversation. I've been working with the state and with Scott and Senator Sparber for the reentry work that is supposed to occur January 1st. Is actually the first implementation of cohort starts to have conversation with July implementation. The state will award a certain amount of dollars, and I'm hoping will be a substantial amount. I think I negotiated up to 6 million for an additional support, but we're waiting for final confirmation on that. That would allow for ramp up costs to support the provider doing it. The challenge is this: the provider that's chosen would have to then use those to bill Medicaid to receive it. The state is recommending long-term that it's an external provider, because that's who they're gonna hand the services off. So they come into the jail now paid by Medicaid, it's not on us, and then they just walk away. So we're still working through those challenges. Is it better served under the contracted medical provider to do that, or a community-based provider?
Just wanna make sure that we have that on our radar. kind
It
of
is.
like The 1115 waiver and all those things, that there's other people that should be paying for these services that currently are not.
Yes, no, we're on track, and we have some actually really wonderful news from the state indicating that they're willing to do quite a bit with us in that first cohort.
I'll just kind of a follow up to Commissioner Kearns. So sounds like there's support at least through the end of this year to fund it with mental health sales tax. But one of the deliverables we'll have come back, and it's all part of this analysis, is what is the results outcomes that we're seeing from those case workers, so that we can have an informed decision as to whether it's a request to fund in the future.
You know, I'll get busy on that part of it.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you. All right, next slide. This is a request of the board to continue our project with Volunteers of America, the Behavioral Health Transitional Support Pilot Program. This provides transitional support individuals in VOA facilities and homeless centers to support individuals connecting into services, and or for those that aren't following through with behavioral health and traditional engagement. We tried out this in the last year and tried to add another behavioral health component for treatment. We're removing that component because it actually ended up being more challenging for VOA to implement. And so with that removal, we'll streamline the process and still look forward to have the 2 behavioral health support individuals. We found that to be very beneficial. They provide a bevy of services that aren't payable by other ones. We're working on the MCOs to cover that. That is always the goal. And believe me, I've been very vocal about that. I believe in July of 2025, the expanded health service needs should have some support on that, but it's up to VOA to really work through that process to get the billing. So more to come on that, but we are putting this back before the board. It's been very helpful in our region. Again, demonstrates Spoken County support to our homeless population. Next slide. Now, this one is a bigger update. I kind of shared this to the board before about we want commercial to pay for our crisis system. So it was a voluntary requirement for us, a requirement for the commercial insurance to begin paying for crisis system. So a little background on this. We fund the crisis system, which is the regional crisis line and the crisis response, mobile crisis response, and stabilization services. So anytime you get a call and you need to go out and detain someone, goes through our department directly to our contractors. Frontier Behavioral Health is Spokane County. But we pay for everyone who is non-Medicaid. That includes everyone who's commercially insured. So if we're all Spokane County employees. If one of us was to get detained, it's actually to our department who pays it, not your insurance. And so one of the changes was Washington State passed 1688, which is no surprise billing, which requires them to have some contracts in place to cover crisis services. And we've been working with them to set up contracts. The four that we've been working with, ones that are willing to work with us, is Premier Blue Cross, Kaiser Permanente, Assurance, and Aetna. They're the largest one in our region, and we're really hoping that should cover the vast majority. We're one of the only ASOs doing this in the entire state. The rest are just saying, no, it's too much work. We believe it's necessary to support our system. Now, I don't know how this will look because their process has been challenging, but we do hope that by putting these forward and initiating these contracts, we'll get a better feel about what they'll be funding. So what we're requesting to the board is we will be putting forward these contracts, which will mirror a lot of our managed care. The requirement is for the H2011 intervention. They will be paying for their members. And they'll be processing it through us and billing us, and then we'll be able to then utilize any GSF dollars that are freed up to invest back into the system. So really getting commercial to pay for their members. So that'll be coming before the board once we nail those down. We're becoming very busy in our division overseeing all these. Didn't think I'd get into healthcare insurance billing in this way, but we are. Again, Spokane leading the way. So much fun. Next slide.
You've done a great job with it though.
And then we wanted to give an update on the RFPs that we put out for part of the investment. So I'll turn it over to Ashley to actually give this update.
But as you guys know, we have released 2 RFPs, one for sobering and triage and one for housing support for parents and caregivers of infants with neonatal abstinence syndrome. And those were released and put out on May 24th. Have been open for 3 weeks and they actually closed today in a business day. We have received 1 proposal for each RFP. And so our team will proceed with the procurement process with the selection committee to review those proposals. And if that selection committee and those selections go well and the applicants have the necessary qualifications and criteria, then we'll be looking to bring those forward to the board here in the near future.
Can I ask who the 2 were that responded? Or is that, if that's taboo, just say taboo?
We are working through the procurement process.
Okay, all right.
If Melanie was in here, I'd be like, hey, Melanie, is that okay? But I think to protect the.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I was just curious.
Yes.
What's that?
Up and
Soon to
through the
come.
end of today.
Soon to come.
Correct.
Which is probably
So tomorrow you can give us the list of people.
Exactly.
There you go. Tomorrow.
I wait anxiously.
Yes.
Next slide, unless there's any more questions on that.
Thanks for moving so quickly.
Yeah, we had those keyed up, so we wanted to get those out as soon as possible. This is a unique one. Before COVID, we had certain sponsorships with conferences and providers on our DD side. And in consultation with our legal team as well as purchasing, we recognized there wasn't a clear process for how to put these forward. They fall within the designated allowance of my department to be able to approve, but knowing that the board want to know what they're approving in terms of sponsorship, we wanted to put before you. These are ones we have historically sponsored, and now that people are meeting in person, we're putting these back forward. All 3 of these have to do with IDD and employment support, community inclusion, and so the conferences raise awareness of that. One of the national conferences, actually one of our staff is going to go speak. They were selected as part of the process, so it's a wonderful opportunity. These will be at $10,000 max. We anticipate they'll probably use less than that as part of the funding, and it actually comes through our grant and aid. So it's not any sales tax or any local dollars. It actually comes from the state. But we want to put those before the board. They will be able to use, for the county guidelines, our logo and recognition of our support and the work that they're doing to raise awareness and build more community inclusion for those with developmental disabilities. Concerns? Excellent. I think that is it.
That's it?
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's it. So that is hopefully going to be the vast majority for the just for this period. You'll see these come forward, like I said, in July. And then not until January of next year will these come back before the board for re-review, unless there's an off cycle. I will throw one thing out there is that our the MRSS grant that we have with SAMHSA is federal funding cycle, which ends in September. There may be a change in that because the state's looking to fund it. So we might discontinue the federal funding and switch to state funding through the Medicaid, only because it's so much harder for the federal reporting. Any of that additional dollars which we currently have would not change service delivery, just change it over to a different funding source. So that might be coming forward in September, just pre-goal.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Pat Bell, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna recommend to the board that when these RFPs come back and contracts are finalized and ready for award, that we consider some media outreach on, I know we're already talking on the project team on the Sobering Center, but also for the co-deployed teams. I think there could be some opportunities as we get those programs rolling to showcase them to the public. So that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think about what you guys do and tracking all of this money and stuff. And the image that comes to mind is a plate of spaghetti. And you got to follow the line, not knowing which piece ends and which piece begins. So I just want to say I really appreciate your diligence and being willing to look at the plate of spaghetti, because I wouldn't.
Yes, it is challenging, especially knowing all the rules on it.
Yeah.
But I think Spokane is a leader in using smartly and being responsible taxpayers for the funding that we do. So appreciate that.
Thank you.
Justin's got a great team.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, all of you do a great job. So yeah. So
Excellent.
thank you. I think
Thank you so much.
Not you needed.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Kevin and I have negotiated and
Wait a minute, you're back, Kevin. Okay.
so we're swapping places, although Kevin is also part of this item, so.
So thank you, Vicky. So it's gonna take us to G.
So this is just a renewal and extension of the interagency data sharing agreement between Spokane County and the State Auditor's Office. The current agreement expires at the end of this month and needs to be renewed so that the State Auditor's Office can actually access files and perform and complete the financial audit in time to meet our September 30th filings for Emma and also for the Federal Clearinghouse so that we continue to receive grant funds.
This is just renewal.
Just a renewal. The only change, and I have this for Gina, is there was one tiny correction that we need to insert for the first page of the data sharing agreement. It still had Becky Garrett's name on it as contact, and it's supposed to be Kevin. So Gina just needs to slip this in on the resolution as the first page of the data sharing agreement. That's all I got.
It's all good.
Okay, and I'll leave this page with Shelley so that she's got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's gonna take us back to 2E. So Sean and.
Yeah, I'm Kevin Norris, IT Director at Spokane County here, and this is Sean, Assistant Director. Have two items to talk about today. The first one is the City of Cheney Police Department ILA with them for New World Support and Services. They're coming on board finally. And then the second one is our technology procurement agreement with US Micro. And Sean will be doing the briefings today on both of these.
So our first one is Cheney PD wants to join the New World Consortium here that all the other law enforcement agencies in the county are part of. It's kind of a question, why are they coming on so late with New World in the latter stages of its life cycle? Apparently, they have issues retaining staff with their current dispatch staff, so they want to contract with us for this access to New World. They'll receive the same services as all of the other member agencies, which is Liberty Lake, Every Heights, EWUPD, Kalispell Tribe. So this will now be Cheney PD. They'll gain access to law enforcement CAD, mobile, and LERMS, the record system. It's going to cost them about $7,000 annually. That's what we based all our call figures on. That'd be their portion annually, $7,000. We've set it up as a 1-year agreement because the sunset date for New World's a little bit uncertain. So we got a hard and fast 1 year, and then we go to a month to month. So we're not on the hook for anything once everything transitions to Hexagon and Axon. They will also contract with IT for their support for their mobiles in the cars. There's about 18 mobiles. We've got it figured out. It'll take about $17,000 to get them all set up, ready to go accounts. That'll be about roughly $1,000 annual reoccurring if they need some work on their machine. They'll bring it in. We'll bill them for that, get them on their way. And that's about it. They're the final one to join us, so they're a little late to the party, but they get here. So, questions?
Yep.
Straightforward. Okay, great. Our other one, we'd like to renew a 5-year contract with US Micro, who we've used for quite some time. They procure mainly our desktops and other technology products. So basically our purpose here is we want to renew our contract to procure low-cost, high-quality workstations, peripheral equipment with US Micro. Next slide, please. A little bit of history we have with US Micro. It's a long-standing relationship of 35 years. The last 32 years we've worked with the company owner Todd Marvin. Some of their other companies that they work with are Disney, WSU, Central Washington University, Norwegian, and Carnival Cruise Lines, the Mariners, and Virginia Mason Hospitals. So they have a lot of other customers. What we get from US Micro, mainly desktops, standard and designer workstations are more powerful ones designed for computer-aided drawing or video editing. A standard workstation would be any office work or PC that goes on their desk. We get monitors of all sizes from US Micro, video cards, mice, keyboards, hard drives, RAM, speakers. We get warranty work through them and their RMA procedure. They have a large inventory of parts that we could draw from, keep their 3-year warranty up and going. And we also get technology consultations from US Micro. Contract term, the previous one was 5 years. We're asking for a new 5-year contract with 1-year opt-outs if we need them. Proposed contracts about $1.5 million over the 5 years. Next slide, please. So benefits of US Micro. Why do we want to go with US Micro again? They have the lowest prices compared to the other 5 vendors that we surveyed, what we're looking to get. They have a 3-year, no questions asked warranty. They've always offered this on all their desktops, no issues. If there's a problem with it, we can just send it right back. They just send us another one, no problem. During the comparison, we added a 3-year warranty to some of those that made them significantly higher. This is already built in the US Micro costs, so that's a good deal. And to guarantee their 3-year warranty, that's why they keep such a large inventory of parts. So if we have just a part in a warranty covered machine, we can just send that part back and send it over to us. So, which is very good. They custom build workstations for us. So they offer to meet any of the needs of any county department. This includes the high-end designer PCs because they're not just a one-size-fits-all. Use that for computer-aided drawing. We have some of these in our department for GIS processing, video editing. I know the sheriff's office uses that for that. They know what to recommend. We talk to them, say, hey, this is what we're looking to use this desktop for. What should we get with it? They can make us a good recommendation. We also procure NUCs from them. A NUC is a little PC that's hanging on the back of that TV there, per se. They can size us the right NUC for each application. So they're great in emergency situations. If there's anything that's urgent comes up, hey, we need this new system. They'll drop ship it overnight. We can get it up and going. put it out, and then ship the old one back, no problem. All these shipping's included, so it's very easy there. It's efficient. We can change parts out with our people on staff, so we don't have to send anything back to US Micro. It's faster, cheaper. Like I say, the technology consultations, they let us know what we need for the application that we're trying to apply it to. They have a proven track record with this. We have departments that deal directly with them for these technology consultations. And I've spoke about before, their RMA process is super. It's just, they'll ship the part over and ship the bad one back. So it makes it super easy. So. And they're a Washington State small business, have been since 1986. So if we do business with them, we're keeping it local within our states. Next slide, please. So I have a 5-year equipment forecast. This takes into account that we would replace all desktops in our current inventory over 5 years. So there's basically 996 computers on staff, with 86 of those being designer PCs for a total of about 1,012 PCs. This also assumes a 3% year-over-year increase for each system. Includes the 5-year warranty. And then based off our 2023 figures, we resell to other county departments 93,000 in 2023. And that's also considers a 3% year-over-year cost increase for that. So a total anticipated contract amount of about $1.584 million. And then there's yearly breakdowns up there for what a PC would cost us and resale and total. So next slide, please. This here's a 5-vendor comparison with over 5 years with the US Micro. Resale items weren't compared here because I couldn't get information from all the other vendors. Acer and Asus had 1-year limited warranties, added a 3-year warranty to those prices, which significantly raised those. Lenovo, HP, and Dell had 3-year warranties. Lenovo's was pretty good, but the HP and Dell pricing was significantly higher with the same warranty. So, but overall, there's a 13,000 to 266,000 savings over 5 years if we go with US Micro. So, next slide, please. So there's been a lot of talk about one device policies. So we did some pretty thorough research into our inventory, and I kind of went with there's 562 second devices currently in our inventory, some laptops, some desktops. How would we implement a one device policy? We've kind of already been voluntarily doing it. IT's been working with departments to, phase out any second device that's end of life voluntarily. Another way we could do is attrition. We just don't replace that second device. They would have to choose whether they wanted a desktop or a laptop. And then the third way I can think we could do this is if leadership mandates this, and then we continue with the attrition thing, or we could reallocate during that time and get our numbers down. So next slide, please. So this slide is basically another 5-year desktop forecast comparison if we were to implement the one device policy. And this is assuming that of the 562, half of those would be desktops, so roughly 281. It assumes all departments, including those with elected officials, that would participate in this. We could remove 281 total desktops, roughly 56 per year from inventory. We wouldn't have to replace those or spend money on them. Total PC expenditure dropped from about 1.09 million to about 838,000. So that's $252,000 saving over 5 years. Roughly 48 to 56 or 53K per year. What else? Total number of PCs to replace that would be in our inventory would go from 926 to roughly 730. Next slide, please. So we're asking you to renew a new 5-year contract with US Micro, so we can continue this long-standing beneficial relationship. We receive high-quality workstations for the lowest cost that we can find. Next slide. Questions?
I'd like to add a couple of things. One of the things that US Micro does for us is we can ask for specific images on workstations, so they all come in the same with some of our information already intact, already set up for us, which is a big savings over getting a desktop that we have to format and do everything with. They'll already come prepared. The other point is that with a one device policy, we not only save on the PCs that we don't have to implement, we save on time that it takes to implement those extra PCs if we had to implement them. So a good time saving for our technical staff as well.
And maintaining.
Yes.
Questions?
So I think for me, I mean, I'm happy to go with US Micro and not worry about that. I think it's, you know, kind of diving in more to the other policy. Are you guys requesting that we make a policy change?
We've got a policy ready to go. We had it ready to go about almost a year ago at this time, and we needed to add a little bit more to it. It took us a while to get to that point. We're to that point now, and I actually have an item on July 9th briefing agenda for a policy.
Because I think there's more discussion on that. Yes, it saves money, but yet how does if somebody's, you know, we're allowing for flexible schedules and different things if they're not in the office and they have a desktop versus needing to have a laptop at home. We all have those laptops and I have a separate laptop at home.
Good example. I have one device that I carry with me everywhere. I use it at home. I use it at work. I follow the one device policy that's not quite there yet, but I just have one PC, my laptop. I just have one laptop. I don't have a desktop PC. And most of our staff are like that. There are situations where people do need a second device. And those would be a lot of the IT staff that do a lot of sandbox testing and things on their PCs, checking out how Windows 11 works in a test environment. And there's a lot of different cases for that, but it only affects a few people. Most people could get by with a single device that they, you know, their Lenovo laptop, they can use it at work, they could use it at home. That's what I do. That's what we encourage all of our staff to do. And, you know, it's something you have to carry back and forth, but it's always nice to have with you, especially with the ability from anywhere to use your phone as a hotspot to do work from anywhere. So that's the mindset I think people need to have.
Okay, I can see that. I can say personally, though, I have this one here at work and I have one at home. That's my smaller one, but then I travel with as well. So I have two.
Part of the one device policy allows for exceptions allowed by the CEO or an elected official. So, you know, that is going to be part of the policy that we present. That's been reviewed by both Randy and Scott to this point. And, you know, we can talk about that, but, you know, it's just, a lot of people don't need to have a PC at home and a PC at work.
To your point, I hear the traveling back and forth. So I think as part of this, if I remember correctly, there are other options. So I know we all have these huge laptops that have the 10Q attached to it. They get kind of big and bulky and heavy, which can be difficult traveling. So when I replaced mine, I actually got a smaller one intentionally, knowing that I'm plugging into monitors 9 times out of 10, whether I'm at home or at my office. So I did make that request of IT. I have one device, but it's smaller than the original Lenovo that I had that eventually crapped out on me. I intentionally got the smaller one for that reason that you're speaking to, that it was a lot for me to be bagging back and forth every day. It was much heavier. So with the smaller one, it's been very easy for me to have one, but to be able to still have my screen set up at home or in my office and just plug right into those. So there's definitely options that IT have been providing those of us that have started to move toward this one direction to look at what is the realistic size that is more comfortable to be transporting back and forth.
What we've also discovered is with COVID, with all the CARES laptops that we issued to people that were working from home, when they came back to work, whether they came back full-time or in a hybrid situation, most people are either working full-time in the office or hybrid. There's not many total remote workers. They had now an extra device that they had at work that maybe they don't need both. And this really addresses that issue for our staff. It's a lot of extra work to manage dual devices for individuals. There's no need for it a lot of the time. Oftentimes what happens is they haven't started one or the other up for a long time. It's out of date, it has to go through updates. You know, they have issues with that. They contact help desk. It's just more work. And it doesn't need to be there. It's more work and more cost.
And I know that's not part of our discussion today and we're gonna get short on time, but I think it's a discussion that I'd like to make sure that we have at the board level.
Oh, I just was wondering, does the contract, you presented the dollar amount if we have to purchase less laptops and desktops in the future, or if we change the policy, it goes down. So what are you asking us to approve then?
Just the 5-year contract.
So we have flexibility with Micro about how many we're going to actually end up purchasing.
Contract is for the full amount if we replace all the desktops, not taking into account the one device policy.
But we're not required to do that for the contract, okay.
Well, I just hope with the new contract and stuff that the product we get, every time I have a problem with the laptop, they always say it's the nut behind the keyboard and I can't find the nuts. Just saying.
We'll get some programming involved with that as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep. So we have a grant, it's a federal grant, we are a sub-recipient through Washington State Patrol. It is the National Criminal History Improvement Program grant. This grant, I believe it's, we received about $88,000 over the year. It's effective as of July 1 through the end of June of the following year. It covers one of our paralegals who is designated as a criminal history specialist. Her responsibilities in that capacity are to evaluate any existing criminal history records, provide reports, analysis to the deputy prosecutors handling those cases, thus allowing us to make informed offers and sentencing recommendations to the court. Looking and or reviewing for errors and other things within reports that we go through, and then correcting and providing updated information to state patrols so that their database can be more accurate. So this is our, I believe we've had this for I know at least a number of years. I don't know how far back this dates, but this is not a new one. This is a recurring one. We have somebody in this position and are looking forward to renew that funding and maintain it. So we'll have something on next week's agenda. Okay.
Okay, that's gonna take us to Jeff McMorris. Are you coming in the door or are you on Zoom? There's Heather.
Open in a minute.
There's Jeff. I was like expecting coming through that door.
Throwing you off.
Since you're on Zoom too.
So Commissioner Jordan, you'll see an email in the last 10 minutes or so with 2 attachments. We're gonna start with the one that says second. Just because I named it second.
So in the packet or separate?
We're gonna pass everybody here paper.
Thank you.
But for Commissioner Jordan being on Zoom, just sent to him. So we're gonna start on the smaller sheet of paper, the 8.5 by 11. This is kind of a quick reminder. We went over this about a month ago. Heather and I have been pulled a lot of different directions recently. So it took a little longer than we had anticipated. You will be seeing 5 resolutions on your 2 p.m. consent agenda next week. And if you go down to the colored section on the small sheet of paper, just a quick recap, Fire District 10 returned money. That was their choice. Part of it is capping off revenue replacement at 10 million. The remainder is going to an internal staffing category along with the indirects. Number 2 is the West Terrace, so we're doing a general fund ARP swap. Parks irrigation, same thing, and there's some indirects involved with parks. That's number 2 and 3. Number 4, as we've been looking for different ways to spend our money correctly and just fix a few things, we've learned that we want to move what we currently have in 3.3, which was the planning staff in Scott Chesney's shop, as well as when we severed the CLA contract. You recall we put that 270,000 in here also, thinking that would pay for some of the new grant staff, since grants was going to be doing the work that the CLA website portal was not doing. So Scott Chesney started at about 732. We added 270. That gets us to that number. So that will be a resolution moving to 3.3 to 3.2, variations on the theme of staffing. And then the final one is the revenue replacement top off, where we split the money that came back from Fire District 10, topping off revenue replacement at 10 million. That's really more about reducing paperwork and internal work than the money. So any questions on those 5 resolutions? Again, just kind of a reminder. Moving on to the big sheet. Was there something there, Commissioner Keating?
Just no questions. There we go.
One good. Today we're going to go through the long sheet. We're going to skip internal. We're just going to be dealing with external organizations. We will be back to you in a couple weeks, after which time all of these groups will have passed their deadline to get data to us. As you recall, different categories have different data requirements that they need to report. So up until they are forced to report it, we don't know how that's going to go. So we're not dealing with that today. So I'm just going to kind of go through quickly a page at a time, and then we'll stop for questions at the end of each page. If you have a question mid-time, just stop us and ask. That sound good? Okay. Yes, and George is joining us for page 1. So you can just come right on up if you like, George. So, the first one's completed, medical examiner's internal been completed, sheriff is internal, so the YWCA. They have a very good plan, spending all the way out through 2026. However, their plan says they're going to be increasing their monthly spending anywhere from 3 times to 6 times their historical monthly bills. So we have some internal questions to us. Are they really going to be growing by that much? They do have a couple grants that they've been billing against that will that will expire. So that will explain some of it. We want to watch it a couple months just to kind of see exactly where they are. They're obviously going to spend the vast majority of their money, but in a few weeks' time, we're going to want to see if you guys are comfortable that it's actually all going to be going up.
Can I just ask, Chair Kenny, I just wanted to, did you get a little paragraph or a little explanation from each organization about their plans?
Correct. So we sent out,
for instance, are they hiring someone who starts next month and then they'll be able to bill for that person's?
Did request it, however, most of them did not.
fill out that section.
Yeah. Okay. They just put in their scope of work, which was not what we were looking for.
We sent out via certified mail about 3 weeks ago now, asking for what you just said, a paragraph of how they're going to spend it, and then a quarterly breakdown and check boxes. Have you followed these explicit procurement based
policies,
on
yeah.
different dollar amounts? Almost everybody has returned them now, but to different levels of, some are A's, some are B's, some are C minuses, a couple are F's.
As we finish the school year.
Exactly. So I get my kids those report cards this week.
Yeah, I just cause coming from the nonprofit world, I mean, most of the spend is gonna go towards staff and benefits, right? I mean, there may be some capital spend, but unless it's explicit, like we plan to build out this new room, like for, education or a new dental chairs or something like that, most of the spend would probably have to be employees, and if they're not, that's my biggest concern is, well, I mean, my biggest concern is just in 2 years that we have all this ARP money that hasn't been spent, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we do the best we can, but it's hard because we're trying to trust that everyone has a plan. So I was just wondering if you had some details for each one, so I can follow up
We
later.
do have details and we can easily follow up with any of you what we have. We do try to minimize the staffing side so we don't hit a cliff for people in 2026. But as you all know, that's also usually the greatest need. Operation Healthy Family, they are working on an RFP. That just came in this morning under threat of you lose your money if you don't get it to us by 9 a.m. So they have switched back and forth with several different projects. We've had 10 meetings with them. And so hopefully they're on track. We shall see. The health district's doing a great job. We kind of view them as internal, but everything's RFP'd. You've seen the work going on across the street. Chaz has switched from a health clinic to a dental clinic. Our only concern is their agreement came in saying they have some huge deposits. Like 95% of it gets deposited. The remaining 5% is upon delivery. So we have the question now, do you understand we can't reimburse a penny until you take possession? Can you flip that much? Chaz is a big operation. They probably can, but we are just making sure they're clear on that. Fire District 10 is actually now complete because of they returning their money. Habitat. We don't have any data from them yet. They're actually one that did not reply. It sounds like our follow-up, a person's out of the office right now. So we don't have much to report there. Volunteers of America, the Breaking Ground. This is Crosswalk 2. This is all capital. I want to remind you all, though, that per ARP rules, if it isn't open and operational, we could be on the hook for returning these funds. And with that, I'll throw it to George.
Well, I think one thing that as I've been working with our subrecipients, which have a lot of overlap with Heather and Jeff, is we're starting to run into, I think, maybe a little bit to Commissioner Waldrop's point, we're starting to run into some pinch points with some of the organizations that operations. There's been a lot of buildup with COVID one-time money. And we're starting to see some fracturing out there as to how well they're able to operate long-term. So this project certainly has some of those warning flags on it, along with a few other subrecipients that we had. So I reached out to them earlier this week to just say, hey, I've got some concerns. And so Jeff was like, hey, if there's an opportunity to be able to share that with the commissioners, that might be helpful. So it's speculation mostly, but there's also enough happening right now with the service providers and coming off of those COVID highs in funding that I do have some concerns about some of our operational support. Volunteers of America let us know at the end of last week that their young adult shelter, they don't have the money to be able to operate that facility. So there's a contract that was supposed to be coming before you all at your legislative meeting later today that will not be. And that's because there's no operational funds above and beyond what the county had put into it to support that. So we've seen some other fracturing occurring with their service portfolio that leads to some questions about long-term sustainability in their operations portfolio.
Can you remind me on this one, is this operations or Going,
Captures.
oh, it's going towards the new youth shelter, okay. Youth housing,
Even though it's 100% capital, ARP rules require it to be built with ARP funding to be open and operational before December of 26, or by the end of 6. Of course, we have this year's deadline, as you're very aware, December 24. We can't make any changes after that. So this is just one, hallway collaboration has given us a bit of a pause. I don't think there's a solution to it right now, but we thought you guys should have some awareness. Next one, moving on. Family Promise also had some concerns. We're getting a lot of emails, we're running out of money. If you don't pay us the next 2 weeks, we can't make payroll. Challenges. It appears to us they don't have cash flow for like the next 30-day period at any given time. Their RFPs are not completed. They did submit a plan and said the projects would be completed this calendar year, actually. Neither of these projects, well, the housing would need to be open. But just to the same conversation, a lot of these groups have received so much money the last couple of years, but they're struggling. There was a lot of expansion. There's not the operational behind it. The nature of government, it's more exciting to expand and grow than pay for operations. So we now have some buildings and great projects, great ideas, but we don't have that boring money. Let's have a fundraiser for maintenance and operations. So there's kind of some challenges there. Anything else to add to Family Promise?
Yeah.
So anything on page 1? Questions?
Yeah, you had talked, I know, previous meetings, about when we approach sort of that critical date to where essentially we kind of got to bring the hammer down and be like, hey, you're not going to get this. We got to pull this back in. When are you thinking that date is?
We are starting that time frame.
Okay. I was gonna say, I
Christmas
thought,
as a season versus a day.
Yeah.
We are entering the season. I would say this is Black Friday.
okay, I was gonna say, I thought you had indicated it was sometime in June and it's like,
So this
we're
one,
middle of June.
95% responded to our certified letter. Much better than the 5% that responded to the email a couple months ago.
Yeah.
The next big hurdle will be mid-July when we find what data has been put in or not, and how much work is going to be to track down that data, whether we can tell you we think we can get it or not. Without the data, we have issues. And then we'll submit the annual report to US Treasury by the end of July for the first 6 months, which is also the fiscal year of ARP. ARP is on a different fiscal year than the federal October 1. So I would say we'll get that work done, which will be right in the middle of the summer 2-week recess of official meetings. So when you guys return from the summer break, that's when we'll probably give you the first week to catch up on the stuff that backpiles. And the second meeting, when you guys get back, I think is going to be when we're going to have to start making some tough decisions. I think it's not going to be like you have to make decisions that day, but we're going to make phone calls, who's touching base, who's got the best connection to actually get the real skinny, those sorts of things. By end of September, we need to start doing whatever it is we're doing. Top of page 2, we have several Spokane things. The Hub Sports Center gets the award for filling out the best report, A+ to Hub. They have RFPs in process. It's going to go starting the construction very soon. They'll be fully allocated, and the fields that our money pay for will be, think of it like Plans Ferry. Generally, it's being used by organizational sports, have contracts with it. This field will be open, or field, whatever they put the money into, will be open to the public if it is not programmed through the hub center itself or other groups. So that will be a public thing. We've already talked Family Promise. Inovia is going to require some amendments. We've had some good conversations with them the last couple of weeks. They're in procurement. You'll see they're 9-10% spent. It's a big amount of money and they're programmed to right through the last day of December 26th. So we want to make sure it keeps getting spent. But our last comments there, moving forward in a healthy way. Ronald McDonald, they spent their 28,000 like a rabbit heading out on a race, and they've done nothing for a year and a half. Per their report, they have one more piece of equipment to get installed that's going to eat up that last $8,900. There was really no detail in the report, except we purchased 3 things, we installed 2 things, we're connecting dots to assume the 3rd thing is not installed is where the money is. Meals on Wheels has been spending good and we expect them to be completed this quarter. Unite, we did not get a response from, but the 96% spent and they've been moving right along. Don't have a lot of heartburn there. Pioneer, we don't have the money back yet. They said they would repay that funding this month, so we're expecting that check. Campfire, that is on our short list of things. We wouldn't be surprised if some clawback was happening. They have changed executive teams like 3 times. No fault of anybody. Well, maybe it is, I don't know. But when it comes to the ERP world, that's very challenging. So we're on groups that weren't there when this started. They've spent a chunk of it. Their new groups have new ideas and completely want to change how the money's going to be spent in ways that's beyond what we can bend, is outside the gray zone. So that's one that's where we have to keep an eye on. It's not a huge sum of money, 143,000 left. But we want to make sure it's used somewhere. So that's on our list. Ahana is doing well. I think a lot of you have toured their new building. ARP paid for roughly 40% of that building. They have put out 300,000 in small sub-awards into their community. They have been joined at the hip with us, and I'm pretty sure all their contracts are really good. They've been very strict.
Yes.
Which we love. And so feeling good about Ahana. Beast, they're working through bids. They said they're gonna be fully spent this year. Their response, it's another one that came in this morning under threat of losing money. So it was pretty sparse. Visit Spokane question. This contract had $50,000 in it for Visit Spokane to put up a Sports County USA website. They have not been excited about doing that since there's been some, leadership changes there also. They came back recently with the feedback, if you guys are good with this, they would like to sub that 50,000 over to Spokane Sports and have Spokane Sports do the website. Everything they've said sounds great. If there's no heartburn, okay, we will approve that and move forward. Sounds like they have a large bill coming our way, like 237,000 from the expo stuff. Next 2 are completed. Any other questions on this page? Page 3, women, children. They said they're going to be pretty much done this year, so that's good. Workforce Council, we got some data. They get the data award. They have served 89 families to date. They are doing training for childcare workers. They've put together I call it like a certificate program for several months, maybe 3 months. A lot of it's based on cultural specific to different communities. So they're tackling childcare from both sides, getting workers who will, in theory, provide more openings and then pay for the openings. They're another one, is a big chunk of money. It's been being spent rather slowly and they are dragging it out through December of 26. So we'll be watching that the next couple of months to see if their spend rate increases. We've been hearing for a year it's going to be increasing and it's been very steady. If the trend line doesn't bend up, that's another one. None of these groups that we speak to on clawback are we saying take it all, but there might need to be a little bit of a haircut. Down to Frame Your Future, they let us know just this morning via email. They will likely be returning some money. The dollar amount is unknown. Another group we've met with 10, 12 times. They've made a couple different runs at what they're trying to do, getting young people involved in the trades, very much needed in the community. They've hit some roadblocks, they've pivoted, they're going another direction. We just sat down with them last week. They have 2 different plans they're gonna be working towards. One I think is a definite, it's just a matter of how much it's gonna cost. The other is a maybe, depending on how it goes. Don't have a sense of how much money is coming back yet, but I think there'll be some return there. There's still 640,000 outstanding. So the next one is where we did have money in 3.3. This is the staffing one. When we have projects that for different reasons we need to shift to the general fund, we have been putting returned money into staffing. The resolution you'll see next week takes, there was $1,002,000 and change. So you see we've added about $2.1 that have come back. Some of them are dollars that can come back and be reappropriated. Most of them are big projects and we're just doing a swap. So that will be 3.1 million if everything passes next week. Depending on a couple things and where price points come in and staffing levels, there could be some funding there, talking 6 figures, not 7 figures, that would be available for reappropriation, but we'd like to, the next few weeks, we'll be getting some more data in to give you a better idea. I think the bookends are about 250 to 750, but there could be some options for the board there. ERP is at 8 million. We've had a lot of conversations with Vicki Dalton, our auditor. I believe she has spoke with some or most of you on some of the challenges with there. We've also talked with Ashley. Heather is intimately involved with the process in the grants world. As you'll recall, ERP started with, I think, a contingency of about $7,000. So I don't know how many zeros are going for that, 0.0001, really no contingency. There's been some challenges. Some of it has been county driven by my understanding. Some of it has been our vendors driven. Just some challenges there. Ashley is in negotiations with Guidehouse right now on what options would be. Everybody I've talked to in the financial world, which includes what's her name in Public Works?
Shannon.
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 Thank you. Heather, Tessa, Randy. Everybody thinks it needs to slow down a little bit, that it's so much better to make sure we go live correctly versus hit target dates and then come in on the backside and do fixes. This is a longer conversation that we'll need to have on another week. We just kind of want to set the table that I see a request coming your direction for some more funding there. One thing that we could do is Rose, don't remember her last name, but she is a staffer that's completely embedded in that $8 million. If we moved her into 3.2 under the staffing, where people that were hired after March 3rd, 2021, such as myself, a couple new commissioners and their staff, some other people will be backfilling that to free up the general fund capacity with the accounting. If we move her, if you look at, she started about 1.5 years ago, we have another 2.5. We will have her for about 4+ years. So it's about a $500,000 lifetime of her fully loaded salary. That could free up some capacity in there. What I'm hearing, they might need more than that. But I'm here to give you that just intro message. That's the trailer. The movie comes later. I'll pause. Hearing nothing, I'll continue. 3.5, you're gonna see a change. You guys probably have seen these enough to remember some of the numbers. And they are, as we get closer, a lot of the original numbers plugged in a year ago when we were doing best guess estimates to get everything obligated. When DC was doing what DC does. And so as time moves forward, we have some better numbers. So the fair roof is still coming in right at 4.5. We have over 4.1 submitted with a little bit outstanding. So there might be a little flex there. Windows started at 750. Gil's done a little bit more work, seeing exactly which ones need to be replaced, which ones don't. That one has dropped by over half. We used to have parks at 916 and a 500,000 contingency. That's been combined at the level the VOCC approved that building a few weeks ago. The courtroom was plugged at 500. It's coming in a little bit less than half. Phelps Field is in bold because the only one that's a final number. So that number is what it is. We had 764 there, so we gained about 13,000. We've added the Monroe Court building due diligence as we're doing, energy assessments, hiring people to come in and do what you do when you buy a property or look at buying a property. And we originally had 1.3 million in this category for green buildings. That was before we had our assessment come in at 33. So I took that one out because it was like throwing pennies at buying a new car. So you'll see at the bottom, there is just over $2 million in 3.5 that does not have a definite what we think behind it. Any of these that come in higher, that could be a solve for ERP if the board has discussions that leads in that direction. There would also be money there that could go towards the green building requirements. We've added we're right at $1 million to that category as funding has come back. So that's just updated where we are. Any questions on that one? Moving down to town of Rockford, they're going to be completed this summer. The next of the page is all internal. So that's the end of this page, unless there are questions. Peter has their swimming. That's Heather and I will be better for drugs. The top, well, we'll drop down to Trentwood because we have internal and 3 completed. Actually, true. I'm sorry, Irwin. They were on the small works roster. Something happened that they got moved off, so now they're going out to time. They don't know the completion date, but they are working towards completion. It's a small award of 30,000. They have a second one we'll talk about in a little bit. Northeast PDA is going to slide in. If they have to go out to a rebid, their scheduled slide-in date is December 20th. So we're very much hoping there is no rebid there. If there's a rebid and we bless them to do that, y'all might have a special meeting at Christmas. We do have 2 people at this table on that board, so feeling good that we're keeping an eye on it. 4 Lakes, they're going to be starting up this summer. They have a July 8th date, so that should work well. Medical Lake is done. They just need to get their paperwork in. Laytown, we did not get a response from, but we have talked with them a lot, and we've talked with their engineer a lot. That it's a town that has 1.5 FTE that does everything. So we've got to know the engineer. We're feeling pretty good about that one, although we didn't get a response. Clear Lake also did not have an update, but the latest we heard was they'll be completed this year. Next 2 are completed. We go down to the second Irwin. A lot of detail missing in their report. There's 436,000 outstanding here. But talking with some of the engineers, give them some more time. Clear Lake has started their second project per Jessica, who's talked with them and Grant's shop. Orchard, we have very little info. We heard they're gonna go out for an RFP in August. There's 900 plus dollars up there. So that one, we'd love to get some more information. Fairfield didn't respond. We've talked with them a lot. Brenda and Commissioner Cuney's office has talked with them a lot. We do know they plan on purchasing some equipment. We just need them to get it done and obligated this calendar year. Airway Heights sent us a statement saying they'd go out to bid early next year. We sent them a 30-day notice of returning funds. They called freaking out, asking why we're gonna do that. They're going, we have our RFP opening in a couple of weeks. It's like, well, that's not what you wrote here. So now it appears like they are going to start construction in September for one of those lift stations. S3R3, we had a very good conversation with them 2 weeks ago. Really felt like we're all on the same wavelength. Their written follow-up alludes to some RFPs in 2025. We're assuming it's either a typo or a misunderstanding. We'll be doing some follow-up there, because based on our verbal conversation, I was feeling good about that one. We also have 2 people at this table on that board who can keep an eye on it. Any questions on this page?
Yeah, that the S3R3, that's actually, the city is doing the work and S3R3 is contributing to the work the city is doing. So it's really the city's timetable, not S3R3's timetable. We're just the pass through.
Whoever does the timetable has to be done this year.
Well, yeah, so
I think the city's still on course to do the design and get it out for bid
Like
this year.
Based on our conversation, we feel good.
Okay.
We do
All right.
think it's maybe just some.
Yeah.
And the same with SIA for the other portion of it.
Yeah.
It looked like the SIA portion was the portion that had the incorrect dates, is what I was estimating. Because the city portion was very evidently on the right,
Correct.
the right track.
Okay, good.
So we're not concerned. It's just be some follow-up. We would like you guys to be aware of follow-up. So if they complain about us, you know it. Comcast. We thought they were done. I swear they've spent more than $2.5 million on lawyers on this. They could have just done the work. And we've been on calls with 6 to 8 lawyers on the other side. It's amazing dealing with corporate America from this angle. They replied this morning, another one under threat of losing the money. They say they're still in engineering and procurement. They have no start date. That was put in an email in writing. Now, this is one that has shifted a couple times. Some because they seemingly have been convinced there's a way to get around paying prevailing wage. And I'm not a lawyer. Never even played one on TV. We all have reviews of prevailing wage, but I've never seen a federal dollar yet that didn't require it. So I don't care how many lawyers you bring to explain it to us. We're not buying what you're selling. We got to the point once that Dale Anderson went off on it. That was really fun. It was deserved. And so we just don't know what to think about this one. We will be doing some follow-up. It was one of the very first awards that went out. It's been out for over 2 years. So that is what it is. Broadlink is on track to, they'll have their 400,000 expended this calendar. CLA is complete. Just I'll point out at the bottom, the administrative indirect cost keeps dropping for those of you with a good memory. And that's going to keep dropping every time we return money to one of our staffing categories. We don't take an indirect on an internal award like that. So we take back the award and the indirects associated, and it all goes into those staffing categories. So that gives you an update where we are. If you've heard of any group that we have heartburn with. If you know somebody, please call them, talk to them. We'll be back in about 3 weeks with data where we have, where we don't have.
All right, can I just go ahead?
Sure.
Just a quick question about Ahana. Did you say that they're on track? That was a nice tour of their facility, so
It worked out well that they wouldn't have been on track had they not bought a building.
but they bought a building.
And because they bought a building and they brought over half the money to the table, if the building is bought with 100% ARP, you'll be signing paperwork until you die. But coming in at under 50%, it opened up the ability for us to essentially pay off their mortgage. They had a huge down payment that worked out very well. So that with their other stuff and their ongoing cost of staff and such.
They're in
doing
good shape.
very well.
Yeah, it was good to see that new facility. It's gonna be good.
No, it will be. Sorry. No, and we'll be ending the meeting soon, just because I know we did say we had a hard stop at 11. And we're beyond that, so, Commissioner French.
Well, then, if we're gonna stop, I'll talk to them afterwards, then off the record then.
Oh, okay, because I know Commissioner Jordan too, they've got an event that they need to be at, so he was on switching to his phone, but.
Don't go away.
Amber had a week, so. So anyway, so I'd asked for miscellaneous items, but at this point, I think since we have two commissioners that aren't here, and we will delay that miscellaneous. I do know after the 2 o'clock, we do have an executive session.
Correct.
That we will have, so. Unless there's anything pressing that has to come before, since we've lost, a couple of commissioners, and I want to be respectful because they had requested this just as we had requested last week, so. Respectful to the commissioners. There's nothing else at this point that I will, we will adjourn the meeting for the day or for the